Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Zechariah. Today we are arriving in verse 18 in the English Bible. And then the equivalent is actually in Zechariah chapter 2 in the Hebrew text. And so I need to split the screen into two so that we can follow where we are going. In Zechariah chapter 1 verse 18, or in the Hebrew, Zechariah chapter 2 verse 1, we read these words. Then, that would be, and then, I would be Zechariah. Zechariah lifted his eyes and then he looked, and behold, four horns. That's the words. Behold, four horns. Now, what did he actually see? Now, earlier on, yesterday, we were looking at how he was actually looking at the angel who was sitting on the red horse behind in front of a myrtle tree in the pool that is very deep, and behind there were three colored horses. Now today we are seeing a different vision. All of this is about vision, right? And here we're talking about horns. So let me just show you. This is what he sees. Now, different kinds of horns. So two horns, three horns, four horns. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, remember, we are looking at what Zechariah is looking at. So it's very important for us to really bear in mind, we have to actually frame the imagery. So we're talking about the imagery that he is seeing with his eyes. All right, with his eyes, he's seeing all these things. Four horns. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so Zechariah said to the angel who was speaking with me, we saw that earlier on yesterday. And the question is obviously quite straightforward. What are these horns? And the angel, remember we talked about the angel, that would be the man that's there, somebody who represents God, a messenger of God, right? A messenger is now passing the message to Zechariah. Says, these are horns that have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. Now, these are important words. The idea of scatter here is the idea of dispersing. It's in the idea of winnowing. I think you know what winnow is, right? You have a basket, and then you have the seeds and the crushing of the seeds, and then the wind blows. The wind blows. As the wind blows, the chaff flies away. And that is the picture of dispersing. It is scattered, it is dispersed, it's all over the place. And who are these? Judah, the southern kingdom, Israel, the northern kingdom, Jerusalem, the capital that represents the southern kingdom and the United Nation. Now, understand that horns are used to gore. So an ox have horns, a number of wild animals have horns. So we're not seeing the same idea as Daniel, as the beasts with horns. Here, Zechariah just sees horns. Now, horns do represent powers. Horns represent nations, governments, and the idea of these horns are giving pain and suffering to Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. That's what's happening here. The Lord showed me four craftsmen. Now, these are artisans. Artisans. If you like, carpenters. What is the role of a craftsman? The role of these craftsmen or artisans has the ability to cut down the horns. That's the picture we're getting. We have the anti-horn powers coming. So it says, and I said, what are these coming to do? These craftsmen or these artisans, the carpenters. So the first question we need to ask is, who are these four horns? What do they represent? They represent nations, kingdoms that comes to gore Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. And so it would be, well, one view of it is telling us that this would be Assyria. No, not Assyria, sorry. That we are told would be Babylon, would be Medo-Persia, would be Greece, and would be Rome. But that would be a speculation as far as we can tell, because they were all involved with Israel, Jerusalem, and Judah. Some would say that these represents four kingdoms, right? Four kingdoms from four corners of the earth. Well, that's one view of it as well. Now, Medo-Persia started well with Cyrus, but they went bad and they persecuted the Jews until Darius II came about to allow them to go home and to lay the foundations of the temple. We saw that as part of our introduction. And so what are these coming to do? And he said, these are the horns that have scattered Judah so that no one lifts up his head. Now, no one lifts up his head means they were humiliated. Now, in so doing, but these have come to frighten them, to terrify them. And then to throw down the horns of the nations who have lifted up their horns against the land of Judah in order to scatter it. And so we have nations, kingdoms like Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome that's coming about. So we have Greece and Rome not happening yet, but these are horns that have scattered Judah. So on hindsight, you can see Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome doing all these. And these craftsmen, these artisans have come to terrify these. And so we know that each of these nations, and if they were not just these nations, but four major kingdoms, they were the ones who were cut down. So this idea of throw down is cast down, right? Cast down. To send away, or how should we say, to throw down, to cast down, to, I guess, uh, physically put down, right? Put down. So that these horns of the nations who are goring Judah will stop doing it. And so one of the views is that no, each of these are destroyed. Each of these are destroyed by the subsequent uh, craftsman. So the craftsman comes and destroy Babylon. The next craftsman, Medo-Persia, then Greece, then Rome. So all of these are that kind of a picture that is being described, but these four horns will be destroyed, will be destroyed. We come to the English Bible, chapter 2, verse 1, and this would be in the Hebrew Bible, chapter 2, verse 5. As we come to this particular vision, again, this is a vision. The vision is this, and then I raised my eyes and I looked, and this is what I saw, a man with a measuring line in his hand. Now, in this case, it is different from the previous chapter. This is actually a measuring line to measure distance, not a plumb line for architecture, but a measuring line in his hand. So whenever we see man, it's very likely to be read also as an angel. So I said, "Where are you going?" And he said to me, "To measure Jerusalem, to see how wide it is and how long it is." This would be going to demonstrate that this measurement is to retain the size of Jerusalem. And behold, the angel who had been speaking with me, this is a different angel. This is a different angel. This one goes and measure. And the one who's been talking to Zechariah was going out. And then another angel met him. So there we see a lot of angels meeting each other and they were talking. So in this particular vision that Zechariah has, it's a very intimate and very busy revelation. And he said to him, "Go, run after the young man here and say, Jerusalem will be inhabited as an open country because of the multitude of people and cattle with it." Now, what does this actually mean? Now, this is important for us to note that while the measurement is measuring the actual size, right? Actual size of Jerusalem, right here, at the time of Zechariah, which he is measuring at the time of Zechariah, then it appears that right here, and he said to him, "Run, speak to the young man there to tell him Jerusalem will be inhabited." Now, what does this mean? Jerusalem will be inhabited uh, as an open country, no longer a walled country. That's what it means, right? People will sit and live in Jerusalem. So you notice, will be inhabited is a matter of future in this revelation. Jerusalem in the future will be an open country. What this means is they have no walls. It is expanded. And it is bigger than the time of Zechariah. because there will be multitude of people and cattle within it. There will be more and more people. And the reason is this: but I, declares Jehovah, will be a wall of fire to her on all sides, and I will be the glory in her midst. This idea is to tell us that today, at the time of Zechariah, there is a size of Jerusalem. And that was what was measured. But in the future, there will be none of this. God will be the wall, and it will be a wall of fire. So I'm just trying to portray this because God is going to be the defense of Jerusalem. That is the picture that's given to us here. The wall of fire is a defense for Jerusalem, and God will be in the midst. So the picture that we're given in this vision is that there is two discussions of Jerusalem, one today and one in the future. And the future will have no walls, but the walls will be God providing it. Verse 6 or verse 10 right now. It says here, you there. Now, this is a bit difficult to translate. It really is not you there in that sense. It is hoi, hoi, hoi. It is an interjection. It is an exclamation. It is about a woe, right? Woe in the English. So it's not you there. It is a shout towards the people. It says, flee from the land of the north, declares the Lord, because I have spread you out like the four winds of the heavens, declares the Lord. What this means is the land of the north will be the land that is at the borders of Syria and Babylon. And God says, I have spread you. Now, the idea of spread you or to spread out, I have spread it out or spread out or stretched out or dispersed. I think dispersed is a better word to use. I have dispersed you like the four winds of the earth, meaning Judah is all over the place, declares the Lord. In the next word, you, Zion. Again, we have this word, hoi. Zion, it doesn't mean you. It's an interjection to call. Hoi, Zion. Here is to flee. Here is to escape. You who are living with the daughter of Babylon. And this is north. So what we see now is that verse 6 is an A, verse 7 is a B. And that is how these words are being read. Verse 8. That will be verse 12 here. For Jehovah Zevaot says this, after glory he has sent me against the nations that plunder you. For the one who touches you touches the apple of his eye. Now, this is a very interesting expression, I think. Very interesting expression. So let's look at it carefully. He said, this is what God is said. After glory, in verse 8. in verse 8 here and in verse 12 here. What is after glory in that sense? Now, this would be uh, for the glory that God is giving to Jerusalem. This is glory to Jerusalem. He would be the Lord of hosts. He has sent me against the nations that plunder you. For the one who touches you. Now, this word literally means touch, but it also means to strike you. Uh, the ones who lay their hands on you. Okay, I think it would be a good word. Lay hands on you. Touches the apple of his eye. Now, the apple of his eye literally means the pupil. The pupil of God's eye. And so here reminds us that the apple of God's eyes, the apple or the pupil of God's eye is Israel. And so God says, I will give you glory again because you have been dispersed. You come back. I give you glory. And all the nations that plunder you is given a warning. You touch Israel, you touch God's eye or the pupil of his eye. So you think of it this way. God is really saying how important Jerusalem is to God. And anyone who touches Jerusalem will be equivalent to touching God's pupil. And that is a very center part of God's eye. So that's the imagery that is being given here. For look, I am going to wave my hand over them so that they will be plundered for their slaves. Now, this idea here, how would you say? It is to let us know. I think it let us know that those who oppressed the Jewish nation will become prey and plunder for Israel, which means that there will be a change, a reversal of fortunes, right? A reversal of fortunes. Those nations that plunder Jerusalem, Jerusalem will plunder them, all by God waving. This idea of waving, it is to swing his hand back and forth over them. And so this is an imagery, right? This is an imagery that God is going to wave his hand over them, and then Israel will plunder and take them as slaves. Then you will know that the Lord of armies have sent me. Shout for joy, rejoice, daughter of Zion, for behold, I am coming, and I will dwell in your midst. This is really talking about the future, declares the Lord. In the future where fortunes will be reversed. Verse 11, and many nations will join themselves to the Lord on that day and will become my people. Now, this is a very interesting expression. Many nations will join themselves. This idea of joining literally means to unite. To unite. It is also with the idea of uh, to twine, I guess, to tie together. Tie together. And so, in a relationship with God, so again, we are talking about something that is going to happen in the future, right? In the future. Uh, and then I will dwell in your midst, and you will know that the Lord of armies have sent me to you. Every time we see this, I will dwell in your midst, is always pointing to the temple. Because in the Hebrew Bible, the temple is where the Shekinah of God will be present. And you can see this in First Kings chapter 8. And that's how God will dwell in their midst. And you will know that the Jehovah Tzevaot has sent me to you. And the Lord will possess Judah as his portion in the Holy Land and will again choose Jerusalem. Now, let me just break this down again. This is verse 16, right here. So, what does it mean to possess? This idea here is that God will take Judah as heritage. So, possess here literally means to take or acquire, right? Acquire. Uh, what else does it mean? It will mean to inherit. Now, this is also a reverse. So, take a look at this. Judah inherits land, inherits the land. In verse 12, we are told that God inherits Judah, right? The nation. And so that is how it is described, so that we now can see that Judah is even more important than Judah acquiring the Holy Land. Now, the idea of Holy Land is the soil that is special, the special land. What special land? The land that God originally gave to Israel to be possessed. And so this idea is this uh, that is telling us that God will take possession, and this idea of God will take possession is in the future, right? This is in the future picture. And will again choose Jerusalem. These two ideas of choosing Jerusalem and possessing Judah really gives us the picture of God appointing Jerusalem as the location of his presence. So we saw that yesterday, right? We saw this yesterday. So now we come to the end of this chapter, verse 13. It says here, be silent, all mankind, before the Lord, for he has roused himself from his holy dwelling. Remember, everything we're reading is an imagery. It is to paint a picture, and the picture itself with the actions tells the lesson, tells the message. So it says, be silent, be still. This is hush. What else? Hold your tongue, right? hold tongue. This is what it means. Be silent. Hush. Uh, be still. Right? Be still. Don't move. Don't say anything. That is what silent here means. Now, the next word is important because this is an imperative, right? Imperative. An instruction. Instruction to all mankind. Now, this word mankind is not correct, but I'll leave it there because that is a possible way of translating it. But this word literally means flesh. So it is actually talking about mankind, right? Humanity. Humanity. But people who are, well, things that has flesh. So, and as they stand before the face of God, this is in the future, and all flesh will stand before God. So we have God, and as God faces this way, all flesh is before him and they are silent. They are told to be silent. So you can see the multitude of people before God. And the reason is this, that God is roused. God is stirred. And so the picture given to us is that he is awoken. And so let me use this as a final explanation. People think that God is asleep. Why? Because Israel, or you use the word here, Judah, is humiliated. So the idea is, where is God? And as they torment Israel, God comes and says that, well, I'm going to wave my hand over them. If they touch Israel, they are touching the pupil of my eye. I will turn around their fortunes. Then Israel will be able to shout for joy because I am coming to dwell in your midst. And as God dwells in their midst, the nations will then join themselves to God and will become God's people. And I will dwell in your midst, and the temple will be there. And so the picture that we are given here is very much Isaiah chapter 2. And in the final verse here, God is saying, I am waking up. You have done enough. I am going to defend Judah now. And if God defends Judah, then you will find that nobody else can touch Judah. But we are seeing that this would be a future event, not a present day of Zechariah, not even in our day. And so we need to appreciate a sense of future messages, that all these will happen one day in the future, and all mankind will be still before God. And God says, I have woken up, so don't disturb me now. I am going to defend Jerusalem, and nobody can touch them. If you touch them, you touch me. Now, that is the kind of language that's being used. And so, again, I'm saying this. These are what we call prophetic language, shown in a vision, not in an instruction. And so we need to appreciate and understand the imagery. And from the imagery, then we will appreciate the message that's coming across. And it's not as literal as we would want it to be in a form of messaging because of the way that images are provided. For example, God says, if you touch Judah, you are touching the apple of my eye. well, people just can't touch God in that sense, but it is in that imagery to say that you touch them, you touch me. So it is in effect that God says, I am defending them. I am the great defender in that sense. So with this, we come to the end of chapter 2.